Good afternoon, everyone. We're back here today, and we are going to continue our study on a book John Stott wrote on basic Christianity. Last week, we just did a brief overview, and today we're going to get into the claims of Christ. We have seen that we need to seek in order to find. But where are we going to begin the search? The Christian answer is that we need to start with Jesus of Nazareth. The distinctively Christian claim about God is that he has spoken and acted fully and finally in Jesus Christ. So the critical question that we're going to ask, was this Christ the Son of God or not? And that's pretty much going to be our theme today. There are two main reasons why our investigation into Christianity should begin with the person of Christ. The first is the essence of Christianity is Christ. Who Christ is and what he has done are the rock upon which the Christian religion is built. If he was not who he said he was, and if he did not do what he said he had come to do, then the foundation is undermined and the whole thing will collapse. If we take Christ out of Christianity and you remove the heart from it, there's practically nothing left, because Christ is the center of Christianity. Everything else is peripheral. We are not concerned primarily with the effect that he has had on the world, though that is important. Our concern basically today is going to be with the man himself and who he was. So I'm going to turn it over to Lillian, and we're going to look at that a little bit more in depth.
All right. So we are going to go in the back of these books. There are questions for each chapter. So we're on chapter 2. And the first question here from the book is, why should an investigation into Christianity begin with the person of Jesus Christ? And I answer that question. Ken just talked about it, that he's the entire foundation for the Christian faith. His name is in the name of the religion. So if you're going to start to examine a religion, it is very, very important that you figure out what that religion is based on. You take any religion. Hinduism, they are talking about the Hindu God. Mormonism, they are basing it on a man whose last name is Mormon, right?
John Smith.
John Smith. Okay, well, you base it on somebody. Every religion is based on somebody. And so when we're talking about Christianity, you have to know who was the basis for this belief and this way of life. Do you have anything to add, Alexis?
It's basically what you said is Christianity, it loses its value without Christ, because Christ is a centerpiece.
Yeah, absolutely. I like that it loses its value. That it almost seems like it doesn't have any purpose.
Right.
If that person, the basis is not there.
It's just almost like an empty egg.
Yeah, exactly. Like an empty egg. We don't want empty eggs, y'all.
We want all of our eggs full
eggs.
And in our baskets.
We do.
I think another reason this is important is in Matthew, we're instructed to go and make disciples.
Mm-hmm.
And I think far too many people are so intimidated in sharing their faith. And I think basic is because they really don't know who Jesus is. You know, they've accepted him, but beyond that, there's really been no understanding or investigation into who he says he is. Consequently, when someone asks you a question, many times we are dumbfounded and we kind of look stupid, because if he is the center of our life, we should be able to explain that to other individuals, whether they have a faith, whether they don't have a faith. So I think this study is going to focus on an educational approach to Christ. Mm-hmm. It's not going to focus on conversion or accepting Christ. It's on who we are if we claim to be a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
So we can go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Now we're going to, we have another question here. We kind of already talked about that. Can Christianity exist without Christ? And so, no, we talked about that. Is this an excerpt from the book? Okay, perfect. This is an excerpt from the book. The author, John Stott, writes, "We might think of Christianity as a system of morals, ethics, or values, something like a philosophy or way of life. In this case, it would seem that Christianity could exist irrespective of Jesus himself. You don't need Jesus for Christianity to exist, it may be thought. You just need his teaching. That's the essence of Christianity. Christianity is a life philosophy or ideal. Jesus may have been the supreme example of that ideal, but the ideal still stands on its own apart from him. But this whole idea is a misunderstanding of Christianity. First of all, the authority of Jesus' teaching is bound up with his person and the fact that he is God. You can't separate these two. Take away the person of Jesus, and you take away the authority of his teachings. But more importantly, Christianity is not a life philosophy either. It's not about living a certain way or following a certain set of teachings. That's religion. Although it certainly involves those things. Christianity is a... How do you say that? What does that mean?
It's a rescue.
Oh, Christianity is a rescue religion, as Stott has said. It's about the fact that we need saving. We can't save ourselves, but that Jesus has done it for us in his death and resurrection. In other words, if Jesus never lived, died, and rose again, then Christianity does not exist. So the point of this is that if we are to consider the claims of Christianity, we need to consider the person of Christ on whom it is all based. And like you said earlier, Ken, about going and making disciples, that is told to us in Matthew in the Bible, it would not make any sense to go out and to make disciples and teach if you don't even know who you're talking about, because then you're just making a disciple of yourself. Mm-hmm. And how smart is that? It's not very smart, because we all have our own interpretations of things and we all have our different viewpoints. But if we're going to go out and talk to other people about our viewpoints and our perspectives, that's not the actual truth. We have to go and talk to people about the actual truth of Jesus, not what we think or whatever, but we need to be sharing the truth of who he is.
And the only way we can share that truth is if we have a knowledge of the Bible.
Correct.
And we're going to find that as we deal more in depth with the very character claims of Christ, mm-hmm. because it's going to come directly through Scripture. It's not an opinion. It's not a documentary. It's just going to be truth that we find in his word.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Okay, now we are going to go to another question here. How would you justify the use of the Gospels as reliable sources of information about Jesus? Because we're trying to figure out who Jesus is. Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, so the Gospel was in an early era, like an early time frame. And it says in the book that the Gospels are written within a timeline of eyewitnesses, meaning that a lot of these claims are from people who have witnessed it and have been there and have been in this early date. So I feel like that would be the justification of how it can be reliable, is these people really saw it and it's really a credited claim, I don't know the word for it. Yeah.
Like it's been proven and
right.
It's been going around and there is evidence for it.
Right. Correct.
Yeah. I wrote down here, and this may be confusing for some, but in my mind, this is how it works. I wrote down they are inconsistently consistent, meaning that they have the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Some people will make the claim against Christianity that, they're so different and they have different accounts and different things. But they have their differing perspectives and viewpoints because they were written by different people. They weren't all written by the same person. They were written by the person that the book is called. Matthew wrote Matthew. John wrote the book of John. So all these different men had different experiences with Jesus. They were in different aspects of his life and saw things differently. Like Luke, he was a doctor. So a lot of times in the Gospel of Luke, we're going to see more references to the body, more references from a doctor's perspective than we would from Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. So these different men have different perspectives. And so that's good, because if you're going to look at it in that way of, oh, there's differences, but think of a police interview. If you have all these people talking and they're saying the same story and all of their stories are exactly the same, that's suspicious. That does not actually help your situation at all, because then it's like, oh, all these people just made this up together. It's not actually the truth. But if you hear the same story with little discrepancies, you're more inclined to believe that's the truth, because everyone is going to see things from a different perspective and live a little differently. So looking at the Gospels, they have their differing perspectives and viewpoints, but they're all united in telling the same story about Jesus. They're all about Jesus, and they're all about his life and ministry on the earth and why he came to the earth and the miracles that he did and the life that he lived. They're all eyewitness accounts, which is why they're going to be a little different, because Jesus lived for 32 years on the earth and only had the disciples for a certain amount of that time. So,
Yeah, I think the other thing that's real important is, even with the accounts that the disciples or the writers of the Bible have had, I think we have to remember they were all God inspired. God directed them specifically on what to write, how to write it. Now, there are differences, but there's no inconsistency with it, because the source of it came from God himself.
they all have unity in what they're saying.
And there's an authority.
Yes.
There's
It
an
wasn't
authority to it. And it's interesting because science has actually complemented what the Bible has said over the last 100 years, as has medical profession. So I don't think there's a real discrepancy on the authenticity of the Bible. I think it's more, to be honest, I don't think we like to be told about authority, and we don't like to come under authority. But all of Christ's teachings were taught in an authoritative way that upset the religious people.
For sure. Yeah. Okay. We are going to we have another question here, of course. Number 2, if Jesus is who he says he is, God become man, what then are the consequences for how we must think about Christianity?
It is true, and we are compelled to believe, as Scott says, if Jesus Christ can be shown to have a uniquely divine person, many other problems begin naturally to be solved. The existence of God is proved, and the character of God is revealed if Jesus was divine. Again, questions about man's duty and destiny, life after death, the purpose and authority of the Old Testament, and the meaning of the cross begin to be answered because Jesus taught about these things, and his teachings must be true if this person is divine. And the point here is, this is why we begin our inquiry of Christianity with Jesus. It is on him and his claims that Christianity rises and then falls.
All right. Our next question here is, what is so remarkable about the self-centeredness of Jesus's teaching?
One thing that is like one of the big things that sticks out to me is he reached out to the people. He wanted to draw the people's attention. He wanted to be that almost provider for these people. And that's something that I feel like is a little bit different about this. And it's not about himself. It's almost like about he wants to help the others. He's reaching out to the people.
Yeah, I think something that's probably very important is what Christ was teaching. He was teaching about himself because he was the fulfillment of the Old Testament. And I think that's where a lot of the problems with the Pharisees came because they would not receive him as the Messiah. They saw Abraham, they saw Isaiah as prophets, as king, as key people in their belief system. And then for Christ to come on the earth and proclaim he is God, he is a son of God, was really pretty distasteful to them. And to them, it was irrelevant or irreverent what he was having to say. But I think it's important that if we can accept Christ as God, which he is, then what he was coming to do was teach what the Father instructed him to teach, and in the authority and the power that God had given him to teach, since he and the Father were one and the same.
Mhm.
And the whole purpose was to come. The whole purpose of Christ coming to earth was to set us free from our bondage of slavery, which is sin. Ultimately, that's the reason he came. And almost all of his teachings dealt with sin. It dealt with ushering in the kingdom of God, as well as the end times.
Yeah. I think another part of this is it was really interesting in his book, John Stott. He's talking about this, the self-centered teaching. And he writes, this self-centeredness of the teaching of Jesus immediately sets him apart from the other great religious teachers of the world. All the other religious leaders, they tend to be self-effacing. He is self-advancing. They, the other religious leaders, they point people away from themselves, saying, that is the truth, so far as I understand it. Now go follow that. But Jesus, he is saying so differently that I am the truth, follow me. No other religious founder who dared to say such a thing would be taken seriously. And I think it's just so interesting that when he's claiming these I am statements, and he's claiming that he is God, and that claiming that he gives no other option. There's not you can follow me, or you can follow this person, or this person's really good, but I'm also an option. No, he's clearly saying, I am the only option for you. There is no other. He even says in the Bible, there is no other name by which man can be saved other than his name, which is Jesus. And so I think that's just so interesting that he doesn't allow any margin for any other deity or person to have that claim of salvation. I think that's so fascinating.
Yes.
Okay. Now we are going to do the last question in the book here. Why would it be wrong simply to label Jesus as a great teacher? Why is it wrong to say that?
It's kind of like what you said. His claims were so bold that he is God, that people need to listen to him, they need to follow him. And with that itself, it's either who he claims to be, or he is an untrustworthy liar. And that's why it's so I don't even know the word for it, but that's why it would be wrong to label him as just a great teacher, because he's not like the other religious teachers. He's not getting something from like a curriculum and speaking it, because he is the curriculum. And that's why he's not just the great teacher. He is the curriculum.
Yeah, he's God.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. Yes, I think because of the claims that he made, like you're saying, I think you have to research those claims and find out if they're true or not. He, like you said, he made these bold claims, so you have to figure out, okay, is this the truth, or is there something else? And that's why we have this book, to go through what he claimed to be. And like, yeah, he's either lying or he's telling the truth. And we have a responsibility. He's given us the evidence. And so now we have a responsibility to make a choice and to understand what we are reading and understand what he is saying.
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
Yes, I agree.
Do you have anything else, Ken?
No, I do not.
Okay. Yeah, okay. So we have another question here, but we are going to go over it more in depth next week. Our last question here on our paper is, what sort of claims did Jesus make about himself? And I'm just going to do a little overview of the claims that John Stott talked about in chapter 2, and we're going to work on those claims next Monday, kind of discussing, because he breaks them down into lots of different pieces, and we want to be able to talk about them in depth. So the first one is the self-centered teaching, which we kind of talked a little bit about today. Number 2, the direct claims of being God. Jesus made claims that implied or stated quite clearly that he was God. Number 3, indirect claims of being God. He did things that belonged only for God to do. Claim to forgive sins, give life, teach with absolute authority and truthfulness, to judge the world. And then number 4, the dramatized claims, his miracles. These testify to his divine power, but also Jesus designed many of these as signs that pointed to himself and his uniqueness as God. So those 4 claims we're going to talk about next week on Monday.
Yeah. Because there's quite a few to go through, and they
Yes.
get so in depth, and there's so many different perceptions on them. And so we are going to take the time to go through each one and break it down and have create some form of understanding for ourselves and for anyone who's listening.
Yeah, another book that we will be using next week to further discuss this in more detail is Who is Jesus by Alistair Begg. And he breaks it down. I think it's important that we can talk about the claims, but I think it's very, very important we're able to reference the scripture that Christ is making these claims from.
Absolutely.
And that's something that Who is Jesus breaks them down into specific references, which I think are very important, whether they're memorized or whether they're just noted. But it's not opinions. It's going to be directly from the Word, which will attest to who Christ claims to be. So that is going to end tonight. Tomorrow we will have a recap of tonight for you that were unable to listen on Monday. It's going to be a short overview, and then we'll be back on Monday.
We'll be back on Thursday.
Thursday, Thursday, Lillian and I will be back to continue the book on Ecclesiastes, and we should be finishing that in the next 2 weeks, I believe.
Okay.
So
Sounds good.
each of you have a good evening, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.
Yep.
At
Thank
4.
you.